Hey, welcome in. It's the John Cast podcast with that abrupt intro ending. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. It's great to be back. And I'd like to thank my sponsors of today's show, including me and Julio in Fitchburg, just off Fish Hatchery Road. They've got game day football specials, whether it's the Badgers or the Packers, including $3 Coors Light pints, $5 classic margaritas. Now, if you haven't had a margarita from me and Julio, you are totally missing out. Plus, they've got great food specials, open 7 days a week. And also on Mondays, enjoy $5 deals on Moscow Mules. Tuesdays and Thursdays is the margaritas. Wednesdays is the hard seltzers. And on Sundays, craft pints for just $5. Me and Julio, check them out. Also brought to you by Ian's Pizza in Madison, with 3 locations in town and 3 locations in Milwaukee. And they're hiring delivery drivers with a guaranteed rate of $20 per hour. That is phenomenal. So go check out Ian's Pizza at their website if you're interested in that. And go check out Ian's Pizza because they have fantastic slices of pizza on those 3 locations in Madison, also in Seattle and Denver, if you happen to be in those areas as well. Well, my guest today is a former Green Bay Packer. He spent 11 seasons in the National Football League and was named to the All-Pro team in 2005. You can hear his thoughts on the Packers on his podcast. It's called On My Block, with co-host former running back Amon Green. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Mike Wahle. How's it going, Mike? Oh, hold on, Mike. There we go. How's it going?
It's going great, John. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for being on. I really do appreciate it. I was talking to Amon, and he told me a story about kind of how athletic maybe you are or you were back in the day. So tell me if this story is correct. He told me a story that you guys were playing horse once, and Amon pulled out a 360-degree dunk, and he's thinking to himself, man, I have Mike. And then you, Mike, with your size and your weight at the time, you did it. And he said you did it better than he did it. How athletic were you back in the day?
The one thing, so John, I was lucky. I was very lucky. When I was like 235 pounds, I was a average, maybe above average, but not great speed, not great jumping ability, anything. But I was the exact same at 300 pounds as I was at 235. So I could jump as high, I could run as fast. I was stronger, obviously, but like nothing changed for me. So I was very, very fortunate that all the dunks and all the things I could do, at least when I was younger, not now, but when I was at 235, I could do all the same stuff when I was 300 pounds.
Wow, that's amazing, because you grew up playing baseball and basketball before it got to football. So why was there that change from those 2 sports? Because I don't think you started football, I guess, a little later than most people did.
Yeah, so where I grew up, it was like, everyone's got soccer. So everybody played soccer. Basketball showed up in middle school. Like, we just didn't have a lot of options. I swam, I think, when I was like from like 5 to 9, and then baseball was my first love. It was I grew up in this mountain town in Southern California. It was kind of rite of passage. When you turned 14, you went into high school, like you had to play football. It's like, you got to stop playing soccer. Everyone's got to play the grown-up sport now. You go play football. And our football team was terrible. We were Division 8 in California. Like, Division 1's good. We were Division 8. We're pretty damn close to 8-man football. We never had a winning season when I was there. The whole thing's a miracle that anybody got out of there alive. But it was one of those situations where I didn't learn anything in high school. So like when I went to the Naval Academy, all the habits that come with like being a football player, as far as the weight room, exercise, like, keeping a schedule, like little movement patterns and like attention to detail. Like, I learned it for the first time when I was in college. I didn't learn anything in high school. So I think it probably did me a service in some sense.
Yeah, I think so too. So you probably learned it exactly like you had no bad habits, I guess. Right.
So we played the option offense at Charlie Weatherby in the Naval Academy. So I was a lineman, like in quotes, because I was basically like a tight end, as far as we didn't have a lineman stance. We didn't pass block. So there was no transferable skill from there to the NFL. I was just good at the combine stuff. Mm-hmm. It's the 360 dunks. So when I went to the NFL, I just remember the first day, like they lined up Gilbert, Santana, Reggie, everybody. I lost every single one-on-one. And it was like, it was clear that I had no idea what I was doing. So it was, if you're like Tom Lovat at the time, or Jeff Dellenbach and Frank Winters really helped me out. But if you're looking at me at the time, it's like, well, it's kind of unmolded clay. He has no idea what he's doing. We can try to do something here with this kid.
Yeah, I could see that happening. So how much, for those who don't know, and obviously I don't know, I was never a professional athlete, so I'm one of those people. How much commitment does it take to become a pro athlete? Like, because I feel some people love to sit on their couches on Sunday and complain, and they don't realize like just everything that goes into being a professional athlete.
Yeah, I love those people. Because those are all the people that you ended up beating out, more often than not to make the squad. Listen, it's probably just the same as being really successful in any other competitive endeavor, right? It takes having the right mindset. I call it technical mastery in sports, but in other endeavors, it would be a really high functioning technical ability, and whether it's computer software design or whatever that architecture, whatever that thing is, but really just been super technical as far as your skill set. And then just probably the hardest part for everybody, especially really skilled people, is ownership decisions. Those decisions you make kind of away from the field and away from the building, what you're going to eat, the hours you're going to keep, who you're going to spend your time with. Are you going to learn like other disciplines that are going to help you more? Are you going to be a boxer, a Muay Thai fighter? Are you going to learn jiu-jitsu? How much film are you going to watch when you're not at home? Like all that stuff matters, because ultimately in sports, probably like everything else, but it's really obvious when you're in a confrontational sport, like confidence is everything. So if I can earn the right to play well with my preparation, like I have a ton of confidence that you can't take from me, no matter how big and fast you are. If you don't have that, like at some point against somebody, they're going to find you out, man. And if you get found out in front of a lot of people, it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about one of those things you mentioned there was, having to eat well. One of the things I remember when I talked to Joe Thomas, he talked about how he loved retirement because he didn't have to eat all the time. He said it became a thing. It became a chore where it's like, I don't want to eat and I have to shove food in my mouth. And he lost a lot of weight after his playing days. How did you handle that situation, also being an offensive lineman?
Yeah, Joe looks great. So I hurt my shoulder. I blew up my shoulder after I left Green Bay, and I blew it. I ended up blowing it out twice. So I can't really carry the weight that I want to. Like I'd actually love to be a lot bigger, because I was just really into weightlifting, Olympic lifting. But for me, it was I already had a plan of how to lose weight and just restrict your calories a little bit more. But you know what I did that was kind of silly looking back. But every night after dinner, I jump rope for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I just added that to I worked out hard still, and I ate a little bit less, but I just started jumping rope every 20 minutes, and like weights just started coming off, man. I actually got to the point I thought I had a tapeworm. Like I plunged right through my goal. I like dropped my goal weight and I just went right through it. I like lost another 20 pounds. I was like freaking out. I didn't know what to do with myself. I started eating everything in sight.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, okay. Well, I've got a jump rope. My daughter has a jump rope. I can go do that 20 minutes. I think people listening are like, hey, I can go lose some weight 20 minutes a day. That's
20 minutes a day.
Yeah, exactly. That's really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the team. And one of the storylines going around the Green Bay Packers is the health of David Bakhtiari. It's been like that for a while. Don't know when he's exactly going to play. I guess my question is, how much would David Bakhtiari help this team? Like, where would we see that when he gets back on the field?
He's a force multiplier. We talked about it a little bit last year, in that he's so good. Like Josh has done a great job, and Josh is going to have a great career in the NFL. But Bach's probably one of the top 3 guys in the league if he's healthy. And when you're at that level in the game, the confidence that you bring to the table, as far as how that rubs off on John Runyon Jr. and Myers, how that rubs off on the running backs who are having to run behind him, maybe most importantly, how that rubs off on Aaron, knowing that his like the timer in the back of his head isn't going to be as short as it used to be. Not because Josh is playing bad, but because Bach's really that good. So, for me, I use that term force multiplier, I think, just because it's not only what he brings to the table, but it's also the influence that he has, maybe, non-language kind of influence he has with all these other guys, as far as the confidence that he brings in both the preparation and the process.
Now, the Packers offense is something that obviously, with the loss of Devontae Adams, a lot of fans wondering, like, how is this offense going to look? We're a couple of games into the season right now, but I'll ask you this question. Allen Lazard played for the first time last week, and I think he'll probably be the guy as far as Aaron Rodgers' top target, although I think you could probably make an argument maybe Aaron Jones might have that catches, most catches at the end of the year, but who knows? Who do you think will be that guy that steps up in the place of Devontae?
Well, the thing about Allen Lazard is he's going to get the snaps, because the guy, like what that guy means to the offense in terms of his off the ball or off receiver duties. Like he's probably the second best non-lineman blocker on the team after Mercedes Lewis. And so the way he throws his helmet into defensive linemen, into linebackers, and creates extra lanes, extra running room for Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, like it's an integral part of our running game. It was last year, so he's going to get that time and those opportunities. Aaron seems to have confidence in him. He looks the part. I think at times he looked the part last year as far as somebody who's going to be able to take over and play that X receiver position. But I would say that this is probably going to be every week to week, you're going to have a new leader in the locker room as far as receptions. We've seen it over the first 2 weeks. It's already changed. Sammy Watkins showed some things last week that he can still get open against rookie defensive backs. And so you're excited to see that. Cobb's always going to be a security blanket for Aaron as long as he's here. And certainly Tunyon coming back off an injury, you think he's going to get some good looks as well at being a high-level tight end receiver. But Lazard could very easily be a guy who's getting 8-10 catches a week and you don't blink at it. But like to your point, the running backs this year are going to make and break this offense. Like if we can get our running backs going week in and week out and kind of control the tempo of the game using our running backs, I think that's probably the formula for success that makes the most sense in the Green Bay Packers organization right now.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, what you said about Lazard's blocking. I hadn't really focused on that before. I just, mainly look at offensive stats, but that's
I'm an offensive lineman, man. That's all we think about.
Yeah. And you see, you see those things develop. What about defensively for the Packers and more specifically against the Buccaneers? We know Tom Brady's the best ever at that position. He's got all the records and everything. But defensively, if you're Joe Barry, how do you approach a game versus Brady?
And it's super interesting, right? Because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers bring the heat, right? They're Todd Bowles, that defense. So it's like the Packers have to worry about the heat from the temperature in Tampa, and then they got to worry about Todd Bowles coming, bringing his guys off the DB, off the slot, off the corner, bringing both linebackers, lining up 8 on the line of scrimmage. And we don't do that at all. Like, we don't bring any DB pressure. I think we brought, a couple 5-man pressures because we're running our 3-4 defense, and we'll bring both backers, but we're not bringing a lot of pressure. And so playing against the greatest of all time and playing a shell defense, the thing that you have to tell yourself is, look, we got to keep these guys in front of us and make tackles when they catch the ball. Are we going to be able to get home with 4? Kenny Clark's had 10 pressures in 2 games. Their interior offensive line isn't nearly as good as it was even at the beginning of the season because Ryan Jensen's hurt, and he's an incredible center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rashawn Gary versus Tristan Wirfs this week, that's good on good. Like, that's the matchup I can't wait to see. But I'll just say this. I love Rashawn Gary. I think he's a game plan player, but Tristan Wirfs is the best right tackle in football. So, if we call it a push, I don't know that I'd be happy with that, but I wouldn't be surprised. And if Donovan Smith plays against Preston Smith, like, that's, you kind of look at that honestly, like, Preston might get him once or twice, but it's kind of a wash. So can Kenny Clark get home? That's the question. Can Dean Lowry continue doing a great job of handling single blocks, bull rushing, and then handling in the run game? Because if we can get home with 4 and force Brady off that spot, like, you always find success when you get him off the spot. The problem is it's really damn hard to get him off that spot.
Yeah, it really is. So why doesn't Joe Barry bring the pressure? I think I read, Mike, that they haven't blitzed yet through the first 2 games yet.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So why?
Well, it's part of it's obviously his philosophy, and there's a lot of, like, last year especially, you looked around the NFL, there's a lot of bend but don't break defenses, and we were certainly one of them. In order to do that, you have to have an incredible confidence that all of your DBs can tackle well, and you saw last week. And so you might just stop and start the conversation right there. Like, until you prove you can tackle better, you can't take that many chances. Yeah. Sometimes when you have like an all-pro like Devondre Campbell, you want to say, let Devondre Campbell do what Devondre Campbell does to be an all-pro, and let's not like make him rush the passer if that's not his forte. Mm-hmm. Quay Walker is a guy that I know everyone's super excited about, and I think they should be as far as athleticism and pedigree. You can run right at him right now. He can't take on a block from like a good offensive lineman. So you kind of have these pieces that are trying to figure themselves out right now. Is Savage better tackling in the alley, or is he better kind of being closer to the line of scrimmage where a guy can't get a full head of steam? So we're kind of figuring some of this. Jair Alexander, like, he makes a great play last week, but he also misses a couple tackles. You know, there's some things out there where you're not scratching your head, but it's like, we got to shore up a little bit of our kind of basic fundamentals of football, playing this, I don't want to say rudimentary, but it is more of a shell defense before we start bringing some highlight pressures, especially on a guy like Tom Brady.
Yeah. One thing, I was looking at the box scores before the podcast today from the last two meetings, both Packers losses. I think the one in Tampa during the regular season, I think it was like 38-10. Like, I remember at the time thinking, okay, that's just a game that happened. I'm not going to put too much stock in it. But there is one thing that kind of emerges from that, and it gets back to kind of pressures on quarterbacks and things of that nature. I believe the number is 9 total sacks of Aaron Rodgers by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in those two games. And I forgot what Brady, I think is it 0 with Brady? They didn't get to him very often. I guess my point is I'd have to double check those numbers. Yeah.
Everybody talks. Listen, I was in Miami when he was in New England for like 4 or 5 years on that staff. And everybody just is always talking about, oh, you just get to his feet because he got the blown up, ACL, and if you just get to it, he's not comfortable. And it's like, dude, nobody ever gets to him. Like, I mean, you get to him, but it doesn't phase him. He just keeps playing. That's why he's the best, because it doesn't phase him. There must have been like one game like 20 years ago that he got flustered because somebody got at his feet, and everybody keeps talking about this one moment. Like, he's an unbelievable quarterback, and he's got the best footwork in the NFL. He doesn't have the best feet. He has the best footwork in the NFL. He has for the last 10 years. So he's just a really tough player to get to.
Yeah. Do you think quarterbacks will be playing into their mid 40s more so? Like, is he setting the trend? Because obviously they're getting hit less. There's the health to consider, or is he just an aberration where he's just that good that there's not going to be that many guys going to their mid 40s?
So what guys like me love about Tom Brady is that Tom Brady, like, you saw his shirt off picture at the combine. Like, he's not a super athlete,
right?
But what kind of he shows is he's one of the most professional humans, like, in the National Football League. The way he goes about his business, he goes outside of, he was with the Patriots, and he goes outside of the building to find better help, to take better care of himself, starts his own company so he can take care of himself even that much more, so that he can have this longer career that's still playing at an extremely high, like, he could have been the MVP last year if Aaron didn't have such a good year. And so you just think to yourself, like, there's two things that are going to happen. One, he is setting a trend. But two, there's always going to be really good athletes and guys that think they can get along in their athleticism. I mean, as long as there's professional sports leagues, there's going to be guys that aren't living up to their talent. And there's not going to be a lot of guys like Tom Brady who maximize their talent. I think, just strictly from a football aficionado standpoint, that's what I appreciate about him the most.
I did look up the numbers during that answer. 1 sack of Tom Brady in those two games, while Rodgers got sacked 4 and 5 times in the two games. So there is that to watch for. And obviously, I think if that trend continues, I don't know if the Packers are walking away winners this weekend. But how do you see the game? Who do you think ultimately ends up picking up the W this weekend?
So I've been I don't like betting games against the Packers, but I'll say, like, whatever the money line is, I'll take the Packers with, either the money line or Packers with points. I think they're still underdogs, maybe by 1.
Okay.
It's a tough game though, man. It's gonna be a tough game. Tampa's a tough place to play.
Tampa is a tough place to play. And, the Patriots, even after this, right? I looked at the schedule before the season started, Mike, and I saw the 4 games and I thought, okay, this could be a tone setter for the team. And obviously started off on the wrong foot against Minnesota, bounced back against Chicago. Although I will say this, listen, you dominated Chicago, you won. If they rule differently on that Justin Fields touchdown, it's a different game. It's a different game. Yeah. I mean, the Bears had opportunities in that game. I'll just be honest, but the Packers obviously won. And now you got Tom Brady, and then you got Bill Belichick. I mean, how important are these next 2 games for the Packers?
When your aspirations are Super Bowl or bust, I think you start looking at everything in terms of how is this going to position you for success in January and February. And certainly Tampa in particular is one of those games that the expectation is that we'll see each other again. And I think the hard part now is you have to get one back on Minnesota, because that was, and I think that was probably a coin flip game. If everyone's being honest, that's probably a coin flip game, the first game of the season. But you got to get one back. You really can't afford to lose games you should win, which, like the Patriots game, we should win. This is one of those games that's another coin flip game. I think that's fair to say. But you're going to win a handful of these, during the year. But it's really turns into those games like the Chicago game. You got to win the Chicago game, the Patriots game. Like, the good teams beat teams they should beat. That's really the sign of a good team. You don't lose to bad teams.
Before I let you go, talking about the Packers and everything, I was wondering if I could get your thoughts on another story involving a former Green Bay Packer. And I'm talking about Brett Favre, who's been in the news for those welfare funds in Mississippi that allegedly he, along with officials in the state of Mississippi, helped move funds from the welfare department to help construct a volleyball arena. I was listening to a podcast recently, Mike, by ESPN, and they went deep. They went deep with one of the reporters who broke this story, and they're talking about the Favre texts and everything like that, where he seems to have an idea like, hey, is this going to come back to me? Are we going to is the media going to find out about this? Or we're going to have a blank show? And, I kind of avoided this whole storyline because I'm like, listen, I think it's very plausible that Brett Favre this is months ago, that Brett Favre could have been involved with something that he had no idea what was happening, right? Like he's just listen, I'm Brett Favre. I'll come in, I'll shake hands, I'll kiss babies, and then I'll leave. But as this storyline continues to progress and we find out more and more information, it's not looking good for Brett at all. I know you were a former teammate of his. What were your thoughts when you've seen the most recent headlines?
I kind of thought the same thing you did. Inexcusable behavior if it's true, obviously. You want to think like, oh, he probably doesn't know anything about it. And then the text messages come out. And then I think somebody just, is trying to get a deal with the DA, and he's going to uncover some sort of truth that's going to incriminate Brett worse. And listen, this is a very, very unfortunate situation. If the alleged crimes are true, the allegations are true, it's a really, first of all, it's like you're taken from the poorest people in the poorest state in the country. Mm-hmm. So you can build a volleyball court. Like you just say it out loud and it just screams like there's just entitled. It's so bad, right? Mm-hmm. And then, the thing that's kind of been, I'll be honest with you, the thing that has been surprising to me is that it's not getting any coverage. And like, we're talking about the Celtics coach having like a consensual relationship with some woman in the building. And I'm going, like, I'm a Brett Favre fan and I hope it's not true, but I'm going like, are you serious? Is this really, are these like, do we weigh these things out the same? This doesn't make any sense. And so it kind of, there's a lot of directions you can go. Like the allegations are sad if true. Mm-hmm. And the way that we cover things in this media right now are sad if this is, unless somebody knows something I don't.
No, and that's a good point, is that if you flip on any sports station right now, and we know the one that you're probably talking about, you flip on ESPN and they're talking about the Celtics. I did it today, Mike. I literally did it today. I flipped on ESPN mm-hmm. and they're like talking about that. And I'm like, okay, I get that's a storyline too, but you've got a future Hall of Fame football player perhaps involved in this huge story as well, that I'm not sure if it's getting the proper coverage either. And to me, the brashness of everyone involved, like if you're using state funds and you're just like, you just think like, oh, we'll just make this and no one, like, I don't know. It's very brash to not realize that anyone would fact check them or check.
The only thing that, listen, you're like, because it's, it's my guy, you immediately start going, okay, well, like, did he know about it? And you go, he might, I don't know, and then you go, did he know? And then you just kind of get down to this base level. Did he know that he was taking from the poorest people in the poorest state in the country? Like, did he know they were from the welfare fund? Mm-hmm. It could have been from like, I don't know, like the water fountain fund. I don't know. You know what I mean? You start trying to like, oh, please don't be true, because it just sounds so bad. It just sounds so bad, man.
Yeah, it really does. And yeah, I mean, I don't know where that storyline is going to go next, but I just thought I'd kind of get your thoughts on it, because the more this goes along, the more I start thinking to myself, Brett Favre could be in trouble here. This may not turn out the best for him, however many months down the road.
Time will tell. Listen, there's so many when people retire, when guys retire from football, and then like you don't hear from them. I'm not talking about Brett, but just anybody. And then all of a sudden things come out, and you hear a lot of stories about people, investing in hotels and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, this is why schedules are so important, right? It's like you need to like fill up your time with something, so that you don't have like, what is it? Idle hands make bad neighbors. I forgot that quote, but it's like, man, you got to find something to do.
Yeah. Idle hands are the devil's workshop.
There it is.
That's what Google says. Mike, I appreciate you taking some time to talk about the Packers this season, the game against the Bucs, and also here at the end about Brett. I appreciate you taking the time and the podcast on my block. Do you got anything else you'd like to promote?
Listen, I run a Process to Perform company. It's for player development, aspiring athletes, parents, players, and coaches. There's a podcast attached to that as well, Process to Perform, that you can check out anywhere you get your podcasts. Listen, man, just down here in Texas, living the dream, raising kids, working with AG on a couple things, and enjoying watching the Packers still.
Awesome. And that's Process the number 2 Perform?
That's right.
Okay.
Process to Perform.
Process to Perform. Mike, thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes here to join the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, there you go. That is Mike Wahle on the Johncast podcast. Thank you to Mike for jumping on this episode. Thank you to you for listening to this episode, and check out me and Julio in Fitchburg for all their daily specials, and go check them out during game days for Badgers and Packers games, including $3 Coors Light pints and food specials on game days. So go check out me and Julio in Fitchburg. Ian's Pizza with 3 locations in Madison and 3 in Milwaukee, hiring delivery drivers, a guaranteed rate of up to $20 per hour. Plus, they've got those fantastic variety of Ian's Pizza slices. They do it. They know what they're doing there at Ian's Pizza. JohncastPodcast.com. Sign up for the newsletter, rate and review. That helps a lot. And it takes you like 3 seconds. You literally just get on your phone. You just do 5 stars. If you wanted 5, you could do 4 or whatever. I don't know. That helps as well. But thank you for listening to this episode of the Johncast podcast. Goodbye.